In this module, we'll take a look at Sandbox solutions for SharePoint 2010. Sandbox solutions and the entire sandboxing environment is brand new in SharePoint 2010, and the aim is to provide agility, stability, and security. In other words, Sandbox solutions and the environment allow an end user to upload their own solutions to meet their own specific business requirements, but without requiring administrator intervention. But they also ensure that the other solutions and sites collections in your farm remain unaffected by what could potentially be unsafe code that was uploaded by the user. This makes SharePoint now ideal for multi-tenanted deployment and also provides comprehensive monitoring and management capabilities around the sandbox or user solutions. Now, as a developer, when you create a sandbox solution, you must be aware that not all of the artifacts that you may previously have worked with are allowed in a sandbox solution. Now, of course, some of the common ones are, such as web parts, event receivers, list definitions and instances, workflows and other types such as content types, but some other components are just not allowed, such as application pages and visual web parts. The process of creating a sandbox solution is very straightforward. When you create a SharePoint project with Visual Studio 2010, you can choose whether to deploy your solution as a full trust or as a sandbox solution. Now, after you've created your sandbox solution, you can look at the project properties in Visual Studio to determine whether it is indeed a sandbox solution or not. In fact, you can do more than just determine whether it is sandboxed. You can change it from being a sandbox solution to a non-sandbox solution, or vice versa. So how does this all work? Well, when a solution is deployed as a sandbox solution and the user makes a request, the front-end web server identifies the code that is running as belonging to a sandbox solution. And instead of loading that into the normal W3P worker process of IIS, it contacts a specific different service, which is the SPUC worker process host service. And basically this is the sandboxing environment. The host service will contact the SPUC worker process, and the worker process will run this effectively untrusted code, and we mean untrusted because an administrator has not installed it. It will run it in the sandbox inside its own process, in its isolated process, and will only grant that code access to a subset of the entire SharePoint object model. So there are certain things this code just cannot do because it's running in the SPUC worker process. The actions that it attempts to perform are validated against the allowed subset of the SharePoint server object model, but as a developer, you should be aware that this is really the same object model. It's just a subset of that provided by SharePoint that the worker process validates against. So your solutions are actually built against the full object model. Whether they will run or not in a sandboxed environment is up to the worker process. Now, if you build a web part that attempts an operation that is not allowed by the sandbox solution, you will get a web part error. Actually, when you look in Windows Task Manager on the server, you can see the worker processes and the host services. There are 3 processes that need to be running for the sandbox solution to operate correctly, so we will see more about developing sandbox solutions in the remainder of this module.